one of the very first meetings or times that we gathered this group of volunteers, the new group, was to say, okay, so here's what your role is, and here's what my role is, and here's how we're going to make decisions as a team. And it's all starting with putting the student in the center. And so I thought that that was a very strategic way to set expectations early on, which I know liberates the volunteer because then they know what you need from them, and they don't feel like they're giving too much or too little, because they understand that there are some boundaries that we're going to work within, that has made this a much more cohesive group, I would say. It's just that really subtle but early definition that set the tone and the stage for future dynamics of relationships.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I take it for granted a little bit, that that process that we initiated, and that really started with our program team, because we were rebuilding our program team. We were starting a development team for the first time. Right, the Bay Area, our region, had never had a full development team. It had just been an executive director that was responsible for raising the budget. Um, and so the creation of that decision tree really started at the program level and the team level, with development involved. And so where we defined, what are our priorities and what are the questions we need to ask anytime we're making a big decision or thinking about innovation, and front loading our mission and our values and really clarifying those values, and then going through our capacity and our skill set and our all it goes through 6 or 7, 10 different questions that we ask. And so the value of that, by presenting that to the board, asking for their input on it once it had been vetted within the staff, and then asking them to, even though we don't use it all the time, I would say, like, it doesn't come up every meeting, I do think it was a way to depersonalize those decisions, right? So it's not a power struggle between a board member and a staff member. It's a collaborative effort to decide which ideas are going to move forward based on a process that's public, that's agreed upon and shared. And I think that's something that has been really powerful for our team, making sure the program and development are one team and have a common process. And then also our staff and our board to be one team that we can refer back to when we have challenges or tension. We can say, what's our mission? What's our values? Do we have the capacity to do this? What is the real impact? And then it allows us to talk about what the effect is on our team, right? If a board member says, oh, I just really love this event, I want to do this event, and we say, great, and this is the impact it would have on our team to do that. And so we need to think carefully about what the actual costs and benefits are.
Yeah, I think you really give the volunteer agency by doing that too, because they can then start self-regulating. What is a valuable, how can we make decisions strategically, and how can I contribute in a way that would ultimately just come right back down to that bottom line of the students in the center. And over time, then the volunteers have become trained to really understand your mentality as well as the organization's mentality without it feeling fickle or changing. So I think that's caused a lot of goodwill and freedom for the volunteers. And then I want to transition into talking about how do you manage the kind of board that we have, because we started with maybe 5 volunteers who carried over from the old dynamic that needed that reinvigoration and that that shot of juice and excitement and structure and strategy. And then we did the steps that you talked about by creating some you know some parameters around decision trees. But then we did the committees and started thinking about what skill sets do you bring to the table, and why are you really a valued asset to this advisory board, and what do you want to get out of it. And then ultimately we got to the point where we decided we want to keep growing, and we think we can by having groups, those very distinct groups of subcommittees. So I want to pose the question to you, Ryan, is like, how do you manage the subcommittees in a way that makes a large board feel intimate still?
Yeah, and it's, in my mind, it's definitely a continuous improvement. So I wouldn't say we've arrived at that. the full vision that I think we have for that. But we're getting much closer. I think again, a lot of it to me goes back to the relationships where we put in the time, and I would say we, like you, me, Rodrigo, on our, as part of our development leadership team, and more like as we've grown, Jessica is now doing that. Just spending time with those people to know who they are, what their talents are, to ask, call on them when we have challenging questions, problems, so they feel connected, and they are connected because they're actually adding value. And then to really identify leadership, to let, see who rose out of that and really had excitement about branding and marketing, or corporate partnerships, or revenue generation and growth, and then to then invite them into leadership, to give them ownership over convening meetings, that we're present for. So we're still there, building relationship, and ensuring that it stays, doesn't go in a wrong direction, but giving them, that space to have ownership and leadership. And then I think our executive committee, sort of our small sort of executive leadership meeting weekly, even though it's a huge time commitment, has been really helpful for me, just to have a pulse and to get constant feedback from a subset of board members about what's happening, and then let them tell me what needs to be communicated and how. And I would say a new role, like with you as the head of membership, thinking about that buddy system, right, and how to link people up, so that it's not just relationships between us and board members, but they're actually building connections between one another. And we've seen it where board members just get together and hang out, right? Or they'll network, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I just had a meeting with this person. I just had coffee with that person," and or I'm doing some other project with that person. So I think that very intentional structure, right? Having structures and process that then allows for spontaneity of connection and relationship, I felt like it was a little bit forced at the beginning, and it felt awkward, and like, oh, I've got to like build personal relationships with people in this sort of structured way, where there's also an ask, where we're making like requests of them to give money. And now I feel like when we get on a board call, or a video conference, even if it's not in person, I'm just happy to see them, right? Like, I feel like they're happy to see one another, and there's a sense of connection and care for each other as people that that I think transcends the sort of awkward formalities. But there is that stage, right? There has to be structure, and it has to sort of go through an awkward phase, I think, to get there.
With this latest valuable episode, we'd love to thank you for joining us on the Creating Community for Good podcast. If you found today's show valuable, simply visit our website, creatingcommunityforgood.com, to leave a review, as well as to get access to additional resources and relevant links from this show. Stay tuned for more episodes.